Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name's Beth Guide. I'm with SEO 411, and today we're going to talk about 50 tips and tricks for WordPress that will help you. Some of them are going to be beginner tips, and some may be more advanced. Of course, if you have any questions, please, just let me know, and we'll get them answered. And with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. WordPress has become the preeminent reason and way to build a website in actually probably within the last decade. But as time goes forward, it's becoming more and more prevalent. And really, to us, it's the only item that we can say that will always be the item that we need to use to build a website. There's other platforms out there. There's Wix, there's Squarespace, there's a whole bunch of other ones, but we always seem to come back to being WordPress, mostly because if you want your website to be built, to be sustainable long-term, and for it to be able to be found on Google, it is really the way to go about it. All these other ones sort of stack the deck against you, and it becomes very difficult for the website to succeed. Because of the rigorous requirements that Google has for it. There's really not a lot of platforms out there that allow you to do everything you need to do to be successful in Google as well as a website. So we push everybody towards WordPress because we think that's the best answer for everybody long-term to meet goals and for everybody to have the strongest web presence out there. So the first decision that you'll always have to make when you're starting out with WordPress, if you don't have a WordPress site at all, and you wanted to go with it, there is two different types of WordPress. One is WordPress.com, the other is WordPress.org. The thing is that WordPress.com is sort of in the same vein, if you will, as Wix and Squarespace and these other builders. You're on their platforms. The platforms are not really able to be customized, and therefore it makes a lot of problems to execute what needs to be executed from a Google standpoint. So what you want to do is use the WordPress.org version. And I'm going to give you a few tricks and tips on that part of it so that you understand that you're doing it right. Most web hosting companies will set up a WordPress.org platform for you. It's usually a one-button install that comes out of your control panel. There's usually a button in there that says install WordPress. What I caution, however, is places like GoDaddy do have that, but they use the WordPress.com platform. And in doing so, it makes it very difficult to extricate yourself from them. It also makes it very difficult to extricate yourself from WordPress.com. So if you ever wanted to walk away from those providers, you can't easily do it. So we always encourage you to stay agnostic, make sure that you're using a hosting company that is, what am I trying to say? That is nice and set up well to use WordPress and to use the WordPress.org version of it. So that's a very important function. So that's the first tip that I'm going to give you today about that, is making sure that you pick the right platform and the right web hosting company. As most of everybody knows by now, SEO 411 does own a hosting company in the form of ACTWD. So we are a WordPress hosting company. We are geared for it. We're actually really pretty good at it. So I would say that, but if you wanted other people, I think the only other option really is Bluehost. The rest of them are not as they're not as easy to be able to stand alone. So those would be that would be the first piece of that. The next piece that I'm going to say, the next one we're going to talk about, is to make sure that we install WordPress correctly using the one button push off your control panel. Or if you want to go get the latest setup off of WordPress.org, you just have to download it. There is a setup wizard There are some things that you'll have to do to set up inside your database. They sound scary, but they're not anywhere near as scary to do as they sound to do. So it's like literally like click some buttons, fill out some information, and it's good to go. It's not, you don't really have to have some vast technical skill to do it. Now, granted, of course you could if you wanted to, but you know, it's not all that hard. And like I said, it should be in your hosting control panel as a push button. Just be careful and make sure that it is the WordPress.org version, not a version that is co-opted that to design to kind of force you to stay with that hosting provider. The next thing is I'm going to also talk about, I want to add on the hosting end of this, because I think picking the web host is an important part of this. Mostly because you need to make sure that that web host knows WordPress. They know how to engage in it. They know how to fix errors. They understand what the problems are. They have the proper security. There's a lot of things the web hosting company has to do to make sure that they're able to host WordPress properly. So I will say that part. The other thing that I will say is you want to make sure that that web host understands how to upgrade their end of a server and keeps their end of a server upgraded. So you really have to put some thought into who the web hosting company is when you're doing this. The other thing that's out there on the marketplace is people like WP Engine. Those are platforms. And I'm not super thrilled with the platform concept of all of this. And I'll tell you why. There's some things that I don't necessarily like. One is, and this is going to get a little bit techie, and I apologize that ahead of time, but when you have a website that's set up on platforms, they live under subdomains, and the domain becomes an alias back to that subdomain. And I think you lose some Google juice with doing that. I think that, you know, your website should everything should live in the same apartment complex, if you will, that your web file shouldn't be a sub byproduct of a platform. So places like WP Engine, when you go there, they set up, you know, your website.wp engine, and then they make your domain an A record to that. I just have a lot of problems with that. And I think it flies in the face. I mean, they would argue that, no, I'm not right. And I understand that, but I think it flies in the face of linking. It flies in the face of the way DNS is. So I don't necessarily like those.
You want out?
Terms for
You
work.
want out? Come on.
You have a question, Jim? No, okay. So I would be real careful with that as well, because I just, like, when you start messing around with the A records on your domain and changing how they point to and pointing to subdomains, or things end up getting attached to another entity, I don't like that. I don't like the feel of it. So like I said, they'll argue that I'm not right, but overall, for what's in your best interest, I would take a really wide berth on all of that if that was me and I was just making what I know about that. As far as the way some of these hosting companies are, if you did want to shop this, there is a lot of enterprise license products that are included with your web hosting with WordPress. Make sure that your web host is providing them for you, and that if you have licenses for things that, you know, so like from our standpoint, I mean, I have spam controls, we give people backups, we give people security. We do that all as part of even our most basic has, you know, a whole suite of tools in there for free. Wherever you go, find out what you get for free, as well as what you're able to pay for, and make sure that you understand what you're paying for on that. If you have any questions, always shoot me an email. I'm always happy to answer that, even if it's not, you know, us directly. Make sure that you have an SSL certificate. And I've had several people that I've run into in the last week and a half that they're paying a couple $100 a year for an SSL certificate. I don't know that a lot of people need to pay for that. There's a free version now that comes with everything that that works just as well. It's recognized. It does the job. The only thing it doesn't do is turn the little bar green, but I don't know who really looks for that anymore. If you don't have to pay for it and it should be free, don't go somewhere and pay just because they tell you should pay for it. Your SSL certificates basically are free of charge at this point. So again, that's something that's like a decision I had made with my own company, that we wouldn't charge for SSL anymore because everybody has to have it. So don't pay for something. Ask that question. Find out if you're paying for something that you don't need to pay. But SSL certificates are pretty much free now across the board. Not that anybody really wants you to say that, but SSL certificates should be free. The next thing that I'm going to say is, and this is a common thing that I see with folks, and I want to make sure that we all understand what we're doing here on this. Don't put your site up and then put a coming soon page. That's not a good practice for Google. It basically tells Google go away, and it may take them a long time to come back and visit. So do not use a coming soon page, or this site is undergoing maintenance page, or any of those things. Go ahead and make you a good solid home page. Make sure that you know, even if it says, hi, you know, this is my name, this is what I do, this is our company address, and really not much more. Make sure that you have a real page there, and not a fake page. That way you're not precluded that Google comes back and kind of smacks you in the head and says, hey, we're not coming back anytime soon because you say you're under construction. The other thing is, it's not a good thing for your brand to have that, because people are going to kind of wonder if they happen to go there, or they happen to meet you, you happen to give out a business card at a networking event, and you send somebody to a website that says coming soon. It's just, it's bad for the brand. It's bad for Google. It's just a bad habit. And I see that a lot. Can't we do this? Can't we do that? No, I'd rather have a comprehensive page that's a little ugly than a page that just says, we're undergoing some maintenance, we'll be back, and with the little triangle and some hammer and a ruler. I mean, let's not do that. That's not a good, solid, professional way to do that. So let's not go down that road. So here's the next thing that I see quite a bit of. When you set up a WordPress site, everybody seems to leave the default blog post that says, hello world, this is just another WordPress blog. And they don't go into the settings of WordPress and change either the tagline, remove the tagline, update the tagline. They just leave the default stuff in there. And the other thing they do is leave the stuff on the bottom that says, that this site powered by WordPress, and then giving WordPress a link. So let me put this screen share on here, and I'll show you what I'm talking about here. So let me use this one because we haven't finished changing everything on this one yet. So I think it still has a bad footer on it. All right. Oh, Christina already fixed it. So down here, it has usually some language that says this site powered by WordPress. I would make sure that I went in and I took that out. It's in your site settings. And then the other thing that I would do is I would go, if you go from inside WordPress and you go to appearance and go to customize, I would make sure that I took out the line that said, this is just another WordPress blog. I would take out the line that says anything about that. And then the other thing that you need to do is look in your, and this one may still have it because like I said, this one's not rolled out. So that's why it's a good one to, nope, she already deleted it. There's an initial post that says, hello world, this is just another WordPress blog. Always remove that post when you're setting one up from scratch. If your site has it now, I would recommend going in and getting rid of it, because that's the best practice for that. So I would, that's the one I would give you on that one. So make sure you clean up the things that come by default, because they're not benefiting you, they're benefiting others, and that's not always a good thing. The other problem that I see, and I'm trying to think here, I know what one I have it on. I have another one that, and I'm trying to show you from a real world perspective so you can see this. Let me go here and share this. Let's go back to screen sharing here a minute. I don't know if I can get to it. I might not be able to get to it. I can't get to it. All right. There is, when you buy a theme for a website, at times it comes with sample pages. And if you look, like this one has this theme on it and it says import demo data. And if I import the demo data, it will be pages and page types. Actually, SEO 411 may have it. It will be pages and pages of content that they give you that you can stylize, take your information, leave their style, put your information in, and be able to do that. So there's couple different ways to handle that. Let me see if we have them. Yeah, okay, so let me see where they are. I have them in here as a draft. I'm not, all right. So see, it says dummy content and there's 129 pages here. What I did is I took them, I moved them into a directory, and I made that directory only be accessible with a password so Google cannot see all the dummy pages. I have seen websites that I go and I look at them and all the dummy content is still there and live. So we're sending all these mixed signals back to Google about the website and what it's about. It's really important. So see, this is what a dummy page would, this is just a demonstration page. So I can put a carousel, it says this is for what a carousel would look like. And it gives me a title, it gives me a header, it gives me what, what the pieces would look like that I could put information on. And it's a sample of how to build that page. But what you want to do is you don't want that public to anybody. The only reason this is available now is because I'm logged in. If I log out, this page will go away. So make sure that if you keep the dummy content that you put it in a directory or make those pages private, and don't make the mistake to see it live. I came up on one site at one point, and when I looked at it, it had 300 and some odd pages. And when we started to get into it, it was all the themes, dummy content that was there that the person didn't hide. So just because you can't see it in the navigation, if you can see those pages in the background, you need to make sure that you handle them and do something with them. So, and you can see I have them in the private directory so that Google can't get them. I also could move them to drafts, and you can move them to trash if you wanted. So that way you still had them if you needed them. Okay. So, but I want you all to make sure that you know that those need to go away, because that's a pretty big deal on that one. So this one's going to sound like stupid, easy, simple, but you would be surprised at how many people forget to do this. Make sure that you create a favorite icon. It's a very small little item. It should be 512 by 512. You can do it. And what you want to do is save that file as .ico so that you have a favorite icon. So what that is that if you look here, you'll see here's my little SEO one. We have those, we've uploaded them to the website. Google recognizes the favorite icon, and that way it knows when you look in, you see Facebook has one, Twitter. It's that whole little thing there. Here's my one for the Texans, so that you can, go down a list and those icons kind of jump out at you, and those are part of the brand. So you want to make sure that your website takes a miniaturized logo. And the other thing is that if I have a whole web browser worth of open windows, sometimes all you see is that favorite icon. So you want to make sure that you perform that task. If you don't know how to do it, Google, how do I set up a favorite icon? But it literally is simple as making the image, saving it as a square, and putting it on the website. I always, when I say always, I mean always encourage using Canva to create your images. And as time goes on, I'm using that even more and more now. I think it's a nice, safe way to do things. And you can make this favorite icon over there very easily. So I would strongly encourage you to do that. And we'll go from there. The next thing, Google's cracking down on this. I don't have anything I'm showing right now. So that's why I pulled it back. I don't know that I'm doing anything. The next thing I'm going to talk about is privacy policies, legal notices, cookie policies. As a website user and a website owner, you need to have all of those. Google is looking for those items on a website. And when you don't have them, you're almost immediately disqualified on some level because you don't have them. So you want to make sure that you have a good privacy policy, a good copyright policy, and that you're coming up with that material. Now I'm going to turn my screen share back on. I should just leave it on. I don't know why I don't leave it on. I should just do that and be done with it. Here, let me get that new window. Let me, I always got to find it here in the screen share window, so I apologize for that. Takes it a second sometimes. Start screen share. Okay. Okay, so you should have my Safari window. Let me show you what there should be. Also, if you have a terms of service, make sure that you're putting that as well. Because that's also important. So let's look at what a privacy policy should look like. That's all the way down here. So you see, we have our terms of service and our privacy policy running right here on the bottom. So if I open the privacy policy, this is what we have as far as effective May the 22nd. I want to also mention that there is a thing in Europe called GRDP, and I do apologize, the dog's barking. I don't know why he decided to do that, but Harley, you can stop now. Hold on 1 minute. I'm sorry, everyone, that they decided to do this. Can you stop, please? Thank you. I need to go. I need like a silence booth some days. Okay, so this is a copy of my policy here. You can see it. It says what we are, the information we collect, what we use. I would say anybody that acts and has a Google Analytics account should have a privacy policy. And let me give you a little bit of background on this. The European Union about 2 years ago came out and they started to enforce how European citizens were treated on the internet and what was done with their data. Now, a long thing I can say is that there is many people living in the United States that may be United States citizens, but are still considered citizens of the European Union. There are people that are here that are just, they're, what do they call them? Permanent residents. So although it sounds like crazy that I'm telling you about this whole EU situation, The reality is it applies in the United States, because if I go to a site and I don't have this and we don't say it, the fine is horrific, like $1 million per occurrence. It's not really something to be messed with. So I would surely urge everybody to have this. The one that I have here does have language for hosting in it, but in a lot of ways it has the GRDP rules in it as well. So I would look this one over and talk about what we do. And you see what we have. We have the customers, people that are engaged. We have events and marketing participation and how we use that, how we take our web visitors. There's a statement in here about tracking cookies and analytics, and that we do have some of that in there to help provide a better experience. You'll see WordPress has a GRDP pop-up that you can add to your website. I would recommend everybody having that as well, especially if you do international, but even if you don't, I would strongly urge it. It's a good way to do it. And Google's really looking for it. If you notice, the other thing I have down here is I have our terms of service. These are the things that Google are looking for. And I would actually recommend sticking them way down here at the bottom of the page, because it's a really good place to put them. So just know that they're being looked for, and that you do get some points off if you don't actually, if you're not using them. If you do have a lawyer look them over. I basically wrote my own. Go ahead, you're good. I took one that I found on the internet. I looked it over. I kind of changed it up enough. I'm smart enough to change it up enough to make it match what I needed to do for the hosting company. We also put language in our terms of service and on that as well. So that has that information in it also. Go ahead, you're good. Go. Oh, shoot. So go. So hold on, we're having another dog issue here. Okay, thank you. See, this work from home with the dogs problem, they're almost worse than kids, because they're now fighting over a bed under my desk. All right, so that's that story. Making sure that you have the cookie consent banner. If you're looking for what that looks like, let me give you this example so you know what I'm talking about. If you notice, this one's gonna pop it up. You notice it has a cookie and privacy setting up here. You can accept it, and when you accept it, that cookies and privacy setting stays right up at the top. It lets you change what you want. I think it's really very important to have that. So make sure that you do that. Another thing that I'm going to talk about in this, because it's a WordPress thing, and I promise you will get caught, because there's now metadata in the file. Make sure that you're using your own images and not just running around the internet and copying images and taking images and going to Google Images and just picking an image off of there and saying because it's free that you can take it. What I've been saying, part of the reason I advocate Canva as much as I do is because inside of it, there's images, there's pictures. You don't have to be artistically inclined. You don't have to be a graphic artist. You don't have to be much of anything to be able to make something that looks reasonable out of Canva. So there really is no reason to be scouring the internet anymore to go stealing graphics, and I'm using that word properly. Now, let me give you a real life scenario. There's a company out there that's called Getty Images, and you actually come into contact with Getty image files and pictures quite frequently. Where you would see them is on something like the Associated Press website or news websites. And the Getty image photographer takes the picture. They embed data into them now. So if you go and borrow that image from Getty Images and put it on your website and are not authorized to use it, they're going to come after you, and they may actually even demand damages, what they feel are damages based on what you've used. So I would strongly discourage taking pictures from other places that you don't have the right to use. It's a there's some fine lines to that, and there's some other discussion we can have on that. But the best rule of thumb is to go and use Canva and just be done with it. And that way, those images, you have the service, it's coming out, you've made the images your own, you've uploaded your own files. The other thing I encourage everybody to do is to start taking pictures with their cell phone. You can use a lot if you just start looking around the world as you're walking around. You take a crowded picture. Let's say you wanted to take a picture of a shopping. Go to Costco on a Saturday and just take a picture. um I would make sure I don't have direct faces of people, I mean, from that standpoint, but you can easily go take a picture. I find myself taking pictures all the time now, so we have stock images. We actually use those stock images on people's websites now. And I'll show you an example on this one. This is a site that I'm working on, and I will tell you what I did with this one. This one here, when it comes up, I'll show it to you. It has this picture here. This was taken, I was literally driving down I-45. I stopped on the highway. And when I stopped, I was like, oh, wait, look at that. That's a really cool picture of the city. So I rolled my window down, stuck my cell phone out and took a picture. And here's that picture sitting right there. So there's a lot of opportunity to do that if you just kind of look around and look at what you're doing and see the world around you. It doesn't have to be an expensive thing. Between Canva and your cell phone, you won't have a huge image issue, I don't think. So that would be that. The next thing with WordPress, and let me come back to SEO 411, is ignoring security updates and security patches. And you can have a web hosting company that will do it for you. You can do it for yourself. Or you can make sure that you have the right tools. So let's kind of walk through WordPress security very quickly. I mean, it's something that I could probably talk a whole hour on, but let me see if I can do this pretty quickly. If you look here, you'll notice I have 27 plugins right now that need to be upgraded. Now, you're going to say to me, you own the server, why are you not upgrading them? This website has a very old theme on it, and the theme can't be upgraded. So if I update this website, the chances are I'll break the theme. And I know that. So I have kept some of the pieces, because if I update WordPress, it's gonna cause a problem. Now, as I say that, I have a security plugin that's running on this website, that all our websites that I'm involved with have this security plugin on there. But the other thing that we have that most web hosting companies don't have, which is why I can do this and get away with it, is I have a actual appliance firewall that has definitions loaded in for WordPress hacks, and it stops those hacks from happening. So they never even get in my network. So with that said, I am a little more confident to leave it this way because it's my own site and I understand what it's doing and why. For you, I would recommend making sure that you had a theme. When you pick your theme, that theme is still being updated, because you don't want to get yourself in a pickle like this one that it just stopped being upgraded. I like our theme, and every time I try to take it out and make it go away, I can't make it have the same look to it. So I end up coming back and just leaving this way. There are some good solid themes that you can use. We recommend now to use UDesign. It's very lightweight. It's always being upgraded. They're responsive if there's a problem. There's been a real good, that happens to be a good one to use. I would make sure that the theme I'm using is adaptable. The other thing I will say on themes and on security is I keep running into others that have theme services that force you to use certain builders or force you to do certain items. And I would strongly encourage not to pick a theme that forces you to do anything, because from a Google standpoint, you want to make sure that theme is light and as quick as possible. And the more stuff that's packed into it and required, the more likely the website is going to be to have some problems. So I would strongly urge, when you select a theme, that you pick a really lightweight theme. Theme Forest has a real good selection of themes. They're vetted. There is reviews on them, and you can see how often they're being updated if you wanted to kind of go outside and pick your own theme. But that's a very important thing. So from a security standpoint, you should have a security plugin. There's several of them out there, but I would make sure that you have that running if you don't know the back end and know what security is in place. I would make sure that either yourself or your web hosting company is doing the upgrades for the website for you, so that the website stays up to date. That's a very important thing that needs to happen. And they're very WordPress is great if you stay up on top of it. If you let it languish out there and don't keep up with it and don't keep your patches upgraded and everything done with it, you are starting to move towards being a sitting duck to have a problem. If you're on a web hosting company that doesn't have a firewall or an appliance on the outside that does packet filtering, that exponentially increases your chances of having a problem. So I would make sure that I had as much of these, as many of the security, but just make sure you stay up on it, because that's the best way to avoid something. It's the same with Windows. I forever am running into people that have Windows or Microsoft Office that they haven't upgraded either. I don't know why people don't like to run security patches, other than I guess it breaks things and then they don't know how to fix it. So I suppose that maybe that's a big deal. But please make sure your website stays up to date. So here's the next thing I'm going to address is, do not leave the admin user on the back side of that website in place. The admin user needs to be removed, and you shouldn't even have a user that's called admin. And I don't mean that the designation, I mean the usernames of them. When you set up WordPress by default, the admin user is admin, and that's not a good thing to do. We go as far as to change the address of where you go to log into WordPress, so it's harder to get to. The more of those items that you do and the more changes you make like that, the more secure that your login is. You could decide, one of the things that you could decide that would help keep your website after you remove your user is only allow users to sign up if they have social accounts. So they must sign up with Facebook or Twitter or something like that, so that you can tell that those users are valid. So there's multiple different ways that you can go about doing things like that. But make sure that you take off your admin user, and that we don't have that. I don't mean the administrator account. I mean calling the admin. There's a difference in those two things. Password security is also important. And I know some of these sound basic, but I am always surprised at who tells me their password is welcome or password. I have seen people with a password. If your password is password, just assume that somebody is going to come and steal your stuff. I mean, I know it sounds crazy that you can't use a password and all, but it's a pretty safe assumption that if you do that, it's not going to work out right. So make sure you change your password. Make sure that you use a secure password. What I will tell you is services like iCloud or LastPass, they make suggestions for long passwords, and as long as you are using their remember service, it is a way to remember those passwords. The other thing is, I would steer away from keeping your passwords of your website the same as your bank account. I see a lot of that too. Oh, this is the password I use on everything. Okay, so now we know not only your password for your website, but I have your password for your whole life, and that's not always a good thing to do either. So password security, managing your password with something like LastPass, or even you're like I said, I use iCloud because I'm a Mac user. I'm always happy that iCloud always seems to have my password, whether it's my phone or my computer or my iPad or whatever. That password is usually able to be pulled up that way, so that's a good thing. I did just mention themes. One thing that I will say with themes is they can be deadly. Um, I said to buy it from Theme Forest, and I said it was vetted. And one of the reasons that I said that is because I, I have seen people not even buy themes, download a free theme. And in that free theme, there's a keystroke logger to steal a password. Or I've seen that they had hidden links that got them, if you use their page, that under their page, if you turned off the style, embedded into it was links to their hacker site and to Apple and multiple different places. So watch who and where you get a theme from. It's kind of why, like, all we use, like I said, I use all the sites we have now for the most part, use Udesign. And they maintain it, they keep it up, the theme's in good repair. It's one of the most popular themes out there. I don't have to worry about hackers. I don't have to worry about stuff being embedded into it that's going to exploit the server, exploit the website, exploit the customer. The internet, the world, whatever way you want to look at that, has a lot of nasty things going on. And if you don't really know what you're looking at, there's some ways you can keep yourself safe without actually having to be a cybersecurity expert. And some of it is just don't take a free themes from somewhere. Just because it's free, I might ask the question of why it's free. So that would be a situation. And usually a theme will cost you $50. So it's not a big deal on that. The next thing I'm going to talk to you about is making sure that you have a backup of your website using WordPress. Now let's kind of talk what that looks like. There's a program out there that's called Updraft that's free. It's difficult to restore a website with it, but at least you'll have a backup. I use Backup Buddy, and we include that with all our hosting plans here at my company. Because I think that program works better. It's easier to use. We use it to migrate sites. We use it to back up sites. We can roll sites forward and backwards with it. It's a really good program. But the reason you want to make sure that you have a backup, there's a couple reasons. One is most hosting companies don't back your website up for you to make a mistake and go, oops. They back it up for catastrophic failure. And if they do want to back it up for anything, they're gonna do it in a way that it's gonna cost you money to get it. But if you put the plug-in on your website and you back it up, you actually start to keep a catalog of the website so that if you have a problem, you can restore it. Now, what I'm going to tell you is you want to make sure that when you do this, you do it with a third party offsite. And what I mean when I say that is that when you do a backup and you back it up to the server, if the bare metal machine catches on fire, your backup is now on the machine that's on fire. So Amazon offers a Glacier backup service. If you have a Dropbox account, some of these plugins will hook up to that, but you should not back your website up to your web server, because intrinsically, if there's a problem, and your backup is on the situation where the problem is, that's not going to actually help you. So, and I can't tell you how many times I see somebody back their website up to their website, which, as I say, it should kind of sound silly, but people do it every day. You always want to make sure you use a remote backup destination for things. So like here, we use Amazon Glacier for all the backups. So that's where they all live. And our customers, that's what they use, and that's what we give them to use. So, it depends again, how on your own you are at your host, but yeah, your backups should be on a third party outside your web hosting company, in a way that you can get to them on the fly, and not just stored on a machine, not stored on your home computer, not stored on a backup drive at your house. They need to be somewhere in a cloud, somewhere that you can put your hands on it. And I think that's a big deal. The other thing is, if your website gets hacked, some hacks are worse than others, because the hacks sometimes they hack and they get in and they send mail, and that's okay. But other times hacks happen that inject malicious code into the database that replicates throughout it. So basically, it can't be cleaned. So you need to make sure that you have these backups as well, in the event that there's a problem, that you have a clean database that you can restore from as well. So it just gets really messy when malicious code's injected into things. So that's that. There is that. Now, this is going to sound silly, but people need to do this. So if I'm going to make a major change to my website, I always make sure I run a backup, because if my major change goes wrong, I can just simply kick it back over and be okay. So before you make a change, before you add a plugin, if you decide to change your theme on your website, make sure you have a backup in case something goes bananas. You can always roll it backwards and fix it. I think that's a very important thing to make sure you do. I don't know that everybody's in the habit of running a backup before they make a change to the website. Now, if you're just going to make a simple typing change, that's fine. But let's say you're going to go change 700 products at one time by making some changes and corrections to a database. That should be done. That should be done with a backup being made. So that's a big deal. So this happened a few weeks ago. Well, it's probably been a month and a half now. Make sure you keep your WordPress core up to date. But after you update that WordPress core, make sure you go back and make sure that things are not conflicting and are still running. So WordPress, I don't know that I understand why they did this, but they did it nonetheless. They went in and they took out something called jQuery, and in changing jQuery, they broke, several million websites across the internet. They subsequently came back in and put that back in. They say it's a security problem. They say that plugin users shouldn't have been using it. So that's how they did that. But always make sure you keep your WordPress core up to date. Make sure you have a backup before you update it, in the event something like this happens and everything goes kaplooey. Again, having a good web hosting company that everything goes kaplooey, now what I do, is a good situation. On ours, we actually figured out some of the fixes to a lot of it and ran through and just were fixing people's websites left and right. So I don't know that everybody does that, but make sure that you know that you have that in the event that happens. But I know I say update and I make it sound scary that things will break, but it's worse not to update than it is to ignore it and not come back to it. So that's another item there. Another thing that we see is there is bots out there that walk the internet that try to create and wreak some havoc on websites. They try to add users. They'll steal your email address off your contact page. Make sure you keep your email address on your contact page so that they know it's there. But what I will tell you is there's a plugin here, and it's called Askamet, and it's very important that you have it, because it not only will it secure your comments and it stops spam coming from the backside, it also can be added to your forms and stop junk from coming in on the forms. So this again, it's standard here. This is not we just include it because to me, it's just a waste of bandwidth to let people spam forms. So we include it on everybody's, but not every place does. If your place does not, make sure that you have it. This is probably one of the most important forms that you plugins that you need to have on your website. So make sure that you're all using Askamet so that it stops the spam that comes in, and also it stops form spam. So, and what I'm talking about is, and I think this website actually has some. I turn it off every so often. You can see, let me see if I have some here. You see, these are fake posts that were put on this website that this software stopped. Okay, so you can see here, you need help writing your exam essays. They tried to go post this on this blog here. Okay. This one here is blog spam, although it doesn't read like it's blog spam, because what it is if you look, the guy's got his website address and his information here on it. So if I publish this, what would happen is I would make a link to this dude's website. So that's why he went in there and wrote this on there, because he's got a vested interest in that. And you'll start to see this, that look, help writing information for civil engineer assessments, because that's what we do. And you see how many times this is, every time I hit over it, how many times they tried to post it. They tried to hit this multiple times. So that plugin is what's stopping this from posting to your website. This should never go on a website. In fact, Google will penalize you if you start putting this stuff on a website. So you want to make sure that this never hits the door. Okay. If you do have comments, how do I want to say this? You want comments on your website. It's very important now that when you see a blog post that you actually make a comment on it. Actually go to the website and start a conversation and do that. And what I actually have been doing with some of these folks is when somebody writes me in a question, I actually ask them to go take the question and put it out on the blog. So if you notice, this one was posted, this person was one of the class people. She came, she asked me the question. I actually said, could you do me a favor and go put this on the post that you were reading where the question came up from? So there is that going on. So make sure that you're doing this, but also make sure that you're reviewing them to make sure you don't have spammy ones. So it's like, I want the blogs, I want them to be posted on, but I want them to be posted on with quality and not just quantity. So you have to, and what I find is most website owners don't even know that the blog spam is happening, which is why these people do it, because not everybody stops that from happening. But you want to make sure that you go over your comments, that you're getting comments, that you're trying to get comments to the website, and that you're interacting with them, but you're not allowing spammy ones in, because the spammy ones will kill you. So make sure that both of those going on. Now, it used to be in the old days, we would shut comments off altogether, but really we live in a world now that we need to make sure that we have our blog is getting comments, and that we're filtering the spam with something like Askamet. And I'm going to say Askmet does a fantastic job. I have ones that it stops hundreds of them a day. So I really very much do that. All right, so this is just a little security issue. And I'm gonna, this is a web hosting issue, kind of, sort of, but it's a security issue on your website. And if you don't know if this is happening, you need to make sure that it's not. So back in the early days of the website, you could go and look at a directory, and if the directory didn't have a file in it, you could go and snoop somebody's whole website and go find out all their file names. By default, your web host should shut off directory browsing. It's done in the htaccess file, which is a hidden file that lives on your website. You should be able to see it in your control panel, and you should make sure that directory browsing is off. And the reason why is because you don't want people to go sniffing the website. So let me give you a real life example of something. And I stopped it when I found it. I had a website, all of a sudden we saw it all going like crazy with traffic, and we couldn't understand why. So we went and we looked at it, and we could see that there was a copy of Photoshop that the website owner had put on the back side of their website. They had turned off directory browsing so that they could, or turned off directory browsing so that they could get to it and see the directory. And that when they did it, other people found it. And the next thing you know, you had all these people stealing a copy of Photoshop out of the back of this guy's website. So I have seen, and if you're doing this, don't. Okay, so I'm going to say that too. I've seen people put their QuickBooks online, or their QuickBooks backup file on their website. I've seen them put their master password list for their bank accounts on their website. And they think that if it's not linked up, nobody can find it. But if you don't have the website secured properly, it's findable. And I'm going to tell you, our friends at Google, if you do it with Chrome, they're going to find it anyway and index it. So I'm going to strongly urge you not to be putting secure files on the internet, because that's just not something you should be doing. Although I still to this day see it, and I have to go, I'll go sweep our servers from time to time and find it. And I'm like, you guys got to stop this. But long story short is that I would make sure that you didn't do that. So and we'll go from there on that. All right. All right. We covered SSL. You should just have it. Okay. There's no reason not to. Okay. And you have to, and you have to have it. I mean, it's not negligible. It's not optional. It's not any of those things. So hold on one second. I need to do something very quickly. 703. Okay. All right. So make sure that you have it. And again, like I said, it should be provided for you for free. Another problem that you're going to need to have, or that you're going to need to know how to do, even if you have WordPress, you should know how to do this, is inside a control panel at your hosting company. There needs to be an FTP, a file manager, because sometimes if you break your WordPress install, you're going to need to get in there with FTP and replace your functions file or repair your htaccess file, things that can't really be done from inside WordPress. Again, they sound scary. It's always better to have somebody that's able to help you with these things. But just know that you need to make sure that you know ahead of time how to get into things. I can't tell you how many people I ask them, do you know where your control panel is? No. Do you know how to get into FTP? No. Do you know where your file manager is? No. You need to know these things. it's kind of like, let me give this to you in a different way. Do you know where the fuse box on your house is? Do you know where the water main on your house is? Okay. Most people know the answer to where's the fuse box and where's the water main, because those are two emergency things. Well, these are those same type things when we talk about it. They're along the same vein of that. So make sure that you have some way to get in there. Um, another problem that you may have with WordPress is you go ahead and you put in, you go in and you do something to WordPress and it gives you a white screen and your website's broken and you don't know what to do. There's a lot of causes for that. There's a lot of reasons for that. Sometimes the front end won't work, but the back end will. So just, there's all that kind of stuff. So just make sure that you have a plan for that as well. Again, the best way to fight that is to have a backup. Okay, so that's a really good way to do that. The other thing that you can do, and most hosting companies will let you do this, is have a staging server. So when you want to make a change on something, you can go make it on your staging server. If it goes okay, great. If it doesn't go okay, the earth in the sky is not falling in. You didn't break it, and now the whole website is down. And I'm going to tell you, I had a gentleman just this week that decided in the middle of a Black Friday sale to go make a change. So then it became a, we had said, hey, don't go do that. And, people don't necessarily think, the worst is ever going to happen. Well, when you go and you say, hey, go do X, Y, and Z, and you do it in the middle of Black Friday or Cyber Monday, and it knocks your whole site out, that's bad. So don't do that. Have a staging site if you want to go try things out and go play around and make a run at things. That's the right way to do that. When you make your theme and install your theme, you're going to have an option to pick a child theme. Always pick the child theme. I'll make sure you set that up. That's another way to not have a problem and to be able to roll things back. But always try to use a child theme instead of the main theme itself. And that way, there's changes that will, if you make them, they'll stay permanently and it doesn't overwrite your stuff every single time you turn around. One of the other things that I'm going to say, and I had this happen, not to me, but again, I kind of, these are funny little anecdotes along the way, I think. So WordPress is empowering, and it often allows you to do things that you would need to hire a programmer for and to do, and to the nth degree, and cost a lot of money. But I may be able to find a plugin to do a job, and that plugin may cost me anywhere from $50 to $500. And all of that. But the thing is that I see people go overboard with plugins. And I had one lady that she put so many plugins on the website, it kept crashing the website. And we told her, you can't just keep going and putting plugins in. But she put so many plugins in, it slowed down the website. I'm going to tell you now, and we're going to talk more about this in the new year, but Google is going to be on the warpath with website speed. And one of the biggest ways to slow down the website speed is to use a plugin. And to use too many plugins and to make too many external calls to places. And there's a lot of mistakes that too many plugins cause. And you have to understand that if you're going to do the plugin and it causes a problem, you're going to have to make the decision. Do I need that plugin so bad? Do I need that functionality so bad? Do I need to do something different here? Because we can't, there's going to come a time that giving up speed may not necessarily be the right decision. I know I have it right now on the chat function on our website. I have a chat function and it slows our website down by about 4 seconds. And that 4-second slowdown from the chat throws us over the allowable limits under what Google's new policy is going to be. I actually need to see if I can self-host that chat to fix that problem. Because if I can't, I'm going to have to say, is it more important to have a chat, or is the deficit from the speed more important? Those are decisions that I'm going to actually have to make. So the best thing I can tell you guys is watch the amount of plugins you pull in, because you're going to put in so many plugins, you're going to end up blowing your own self up. And I don't really want to necessarily see you do that. So there is that aspect of it. So be careful, because you can get really bloated on plugins really quickly if you're not careful. So be careful with that. I will say that probably 90% of the WordPress sites have too many plugins on them, including my own. So I know I put too many things in too, but I understand when I do the trade-off, and then sometimes I have to ask myself, is that the right thing? Is that what I want to do? Is that how I want to handle it? And sometimes I go in and take it out. I mean, it's because it's not right. Next thing is on that plugin thing is make sure that if you're not using the plugins right, make sure you take them out, delete them. If you're not using them, they're inactive, delete them off the website and don't leave them sitting there, because that's like stupid to do that. It creates a security hazard. It may make some load time issues on things that you're not having because pieces and remnants of it are still loading. If you're not using it, get rid of it. I mean, the delete key is a good thing, and that's a common issue than what I see. So here's the next one, and I should have put this with images, but I guess we can handle this now. I see a lot of times images get uploaded with whatever their native size is that they came out of the software with. So let's take Canva for instance. I made the notice today for the email that we had. I did in Canva, the notice that I did for you today. Let's go here. So I made my email note and I did this. Now, when I go to save it, I want you to see what I did here. I'm going to go download, and you see it's 2240 by 1260. Okay, I have a 27-inch iMac, and that's still too big for that. This needs to be about 800 across. So what I did is I made it smaller. So I went to 1120 by 630. Okay, I downloaded it at that size. And then when I uploaded it to the website, I resized it again to make the picture size smaller. It would have looked fine. I could have left it completely alone and it would have looked fine. And let me go to my media library so you can see what I did here. It's loading in now. At least I think it is. Maybe it's so big it's going to take it a minute. I don't know what it's doing. Might be my internet connection. I guess that's a good question. Do I have internet? I guess you all can still hear me, so I must have something. All right. We'll come back to that first. For some reason, that doesn't seem to want to load. I don't know if it's my browser or what it is. All righty. We'll bypass that one for the moment because I don't know what it's doing. The other neat little thing is that your web hosting company, when they do it, they may have some image compression on the server side of it. Make sure that you utilize that and make sure that you resize in WordPress. When you resize in WordPress, it works better, because what's happening is the server itself is helping compress those files. WordPress will do it. They're limited on some. Let me see. I don't know if it's me or the internet. That's why, just give me a second here. All right. Let me see. Okay, so the WordPress itself will start doing some compression if your server is set up to do it that way. So I would make sure that you make sure that you handle that and you do it in that manner. Another mistake that I see is people not using a caching server. And the reason that is necessary is because the images start to load in from other places. And when they do, what ends up happening is I get I'm sorry, I'm not saying this right. I get the files are dealt to me from multiple locations and in multiple directions. And when that happens, it speeds things up. So the next thing is that to manage a caching server yourself becomes a bit of a problem. So there's a couple different ways to have this happen. One is I have one would be that I end up with hold on a second, I'm sorry. All right. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so the network caching is you can do it from the server side with something like Lightspeed, and you know that some hosting companies offer that, some don't. The other thing that you can do is choose to use something like WP Rocket, which WP Rocket is a third party. They have a caching server and they do a great job, and it's easy to set up for people that don't know what they're doing. So that's a good thing. In there, they also have something called the CDN, which will help deliver the items and deliver your images from all over the place. So that's a good thing as well. So make sure that we're using something that has a CDN, and that's going to be very important. We're going to have CDN school in just a very short period of time in January, because we're all going to have but till May to get our acts together with the internet so that we can move from there. Make sure that you use a plugin that allows you to add Google Analytics to your website. We're gonna need that because what's gonna happen is you're gonna need to have that type of information transmitted. It's expected, and if you don't have it, you know, I think that's not a good thing. You don't know really what's going on with things. So I would make sure that we had that going on as well. So make sure that you have that. Make sure that you monitor your website speed. That's another thing that's extremely important. You can do that. We've talked about this before. You can do that through a website called GT Metrics. It allows you to go in and pull up anything that you need. So there's that aspect of it. And you can go in and do that. So that's another good thing going on. So make sure that you're looking at your site speed. We're going to have that's going to be a class all on itself of what we have to do. So that's another one. I'm going to talk about rank math here for a second. I've become a real big fan of it. It's an SEO plugin for WordPress. You have a choice. It could either be Yoast, which has been the stalwart for all of humanity since WordPress started. That was the one. Or Rank Math has now come on. I think Rank Math has a much better set of tools with it. I think it provides a much better set of circumstances with it. It's easy for people that don't know what they're doing to do it right. Schema is built into it. Local is built into it. There's like a whole bunch of things that are built into it that are extremely important. And because I'm saying this, I really am advocating everybody using Rank Math these days. That's really kind of where I'm at with it. And I think that is a whole topic all unto itself that I could kind of go through it point by point with everybody. But if you just trust me enough that if I'm telling you this, the other thing is that the graphical interface in Rank Math tells you how close to right you are. So it gives you a score of 1 to 100. So if you're in the 50s, it says, okay, here's the 50s. And then it gives you a list of fix. And you can start to see how many things start to get as close to 100 as possible. So it's a graphical interface also to be able to help you. So that's a biggie. The other thing that you need to make sure that you do with WordPress is make sure that you are utilizing a permalink scheme. And what I mean when I say that, let me see if this is working. I think it is. Let me see. All right, so site admin. All right, so when you come in here, there's a way to set the pages. So when you just write a page, I'm going to open a page here and tell it all new page, all pages. Let's go to a new page. If you look up, where the heck is it here? Oh, because I haven't saved it yet. Let me just go. This thing is not doing what I want it to do. It's making me a little crazy. When it comes up, you should have I don't know why it's not giving it to me, but I should have a line that says what's the name of the page. But I'll do it down here in Yoast. Okay, so I can name my page here. Right now, this page is named like ?123. You don't want to leave it that way. You want to come in and say this page, let's say this page is on local SEO. So you would name it local SEO. You want to make sure you don't leave the URLs the way they come out of the box. because they're not friendly and they're not good solid URL strings. And when you don't change them, Google can't see them well, and it doesn't give you a good presentation. So make sure that you always change the slugs on the URLs to be representative of what your page is about and what you're talking about and what it's using keywords, because I think it's a very important thing. You're able to add focus keywords in here. This website's not using Writemaster, so I can't show it to you from that. This is still using Yoast, and there's a lot of reasons for that, but I want to make sure that you know to change the slug and to add it so that you get the right SEO value out of the page name. That's a very important thing. But don't ever leave the permalinks unchanged. Where you find that is under settings, and I got so much crap on this website sometimes. It's, let's see if it's here. See where it says, if you look under your settings, it'll say permalinks, and you can tell it how to set it. And we do it as custom. So I have it this way. So this is how I set, but you can tell it to do plain, which is this, which is bad. And then you can tell it post name, which is, if you don't want to do a custom structure, I would do post name, because at least it's somewhat going to help you out. So make sure you change that though, because out of the box, it's just plain, and you have this page equals 123, which is the post type, and that's not a good thing to do. In here also, I gotta find where it is. Okay, there's places in here that tell Google not to index the website. Make sure you don't turn that on. I have to tell you, I've seen that done on multiple occasions as well. So I would like to say to you, do not mess around with don't index a page, don't index the site, because it's really the quickest way to blow up your website by doing it that way. So don't. Some people will say, you know, hey, I don't want to do that, or they say, well, I'm doing this temporarily. You know, when you start making suggestions of what Google should and shouldn't do, and you don't really know if you're doing them right, I start to worry about the validity of those suggestions. And then what does Google do with those suggestions, and how do they bounce back from the suggestions you give? So I worry about it. And it's better to me not to get involved with it, especially when you don't know what you're doing, rather than getting involved with it and then having to fix it. Some of these things are topics all in and of itself, but I'd be really careful about discouraging indexing of your website and telling Google not index anything. I'll tell you, Yoast has those same things in there that I can pick. Let me go back to my page there that I just created. Let's just use this one a second. So this page is just sitting here. If I come down here, I can tell Google under some of the advanced that, yes, follow this page. Yes, there should be links on this page. Yes, go ahead and set these things. I would be really very careful if I don't know what I'm doing about what I tell it. Okay. So you can tell Google not to index a page only if you know why you're telling Google that and what the ramifications are, and that you've done it right. You can tell something to not follow only if you know what you're doing and you're saying it right. I'd be very concerned if I don't know what I'm doing and I start messing with these things, because they sound okay, but they're really good ways to start messing your site up really quickly. The other thing that you need to make sure you're doing, and as much as we're saying telling Google not to follow something, these plugins kick out sitemaps. And you need to make sure that you're submitting those sitemaps to your webmaster tools, because Google needs to, that's how, so let me finish, I'm going to finish the sentence in a different way. Back in the day, we would go submit the website, and we would submit it to Google, and like we go and type it in and submit it. I still see notices from network solutions that say, hey, let us submit your website for you. There is no, hey, let us submit your website for you. That really doesn't exist in 2020. But what does exist is giving Google your sitemap and then crawling your sitemap. And that's how they do the inclusion into their directory. Now they could choose to, if you don't have a sitemap, they still could choose to go and scan your website and do those things. Don't misunderstand. But by giving them the sitemap, you're making the suggestion that they should crawl that site, and these are the pages that you've added. So every page that I add shows up on that sitemap immediately, and it goes into Google within minutes of me hitting publish. That's an important thing. So your sitemaps are very important to make sure that you include with them. And that is the, hey, we're going to submit your site to Google. That is the method for doing it. On that same vein, I don't say this a lot, but I am going to say it now. If you go to Bing, it also has a set of webmaster tools. It can actually pull over your Google account. So make sure you go and set up Bing webmaster tools too, and submit your sitemaps, or have it married to your Google account so that you can have that also has your sitemap, and you can get some traffic out of Bing. Because although it's not a major player, there is some uptick over there, and those sitemaps do help get some traffic that wouldn't necessarily come across those channels. The next thing we're going to talk about is structure and categories. And if you look at the categories on this website, I have very few. That's it. That's all the categories I have. You're looking at them right here. And you can see that I don't really use very many of them. This is for press releases, which I think I've only got one here recently. What I find is that we over categorize, and we overdo how much categorization we put in there. And when we do that, we're diluting our website and our ability to rank on certain things. So I would say pick the high level. If you're an accountant, pick small business accounting, bookkeeping, and tax service. Under tax service, I would not go in and put IRS letter, IRS garnishment, filing my taxes, filing late taxes, delinquent taxes. I wouldn't do any of that. I would have small business, small business taxes, accounting, and tax problems. And then everything that was a tax problem would go in the tax problem set, regardless of whether it was a wage garnishment or a letter. And the reason why is because these items are much stronger when they're together. Like I have 23 articles on SEO and 24 articles on internet marketing, or on SEO, and on 24 on internet marketing. Those scream to Google that that's what I think are the most two important things on this website. I also have my podcast that I broke out, and that was broke out specifically for Apple. so that we knew where that was. Okay. And if I go add, let me see if I hit podcast settings, what this gives me. It gives me all the podcasts that I have, what my feeds are, what my website is. So it gives me that. But make sure that if you're doing this, all the podcasts were put together, they were put together for a reason. The class schedules are all put together and they're put together for a reason. It's because that's where they should be, nothing more, nothing less. And I strongly encourage you not to go crazy with too many categories. I got an email in my mailbox this morning that asked an interesting question, and I actually probably need to do a whole post about this, but I answered them back and said, no, don't do it. I posted a blog post for a customer last night, and they got up this morning and they said, why did you not put tags on the blog post? And the reason I didn't put tags is because we've kind of gotten away from that, because Google has started penalizing on some level if you make too many tags and you make a tag cloud. So I don't do it anymore because I want to control that, and I didn't necessarily want to put those things together. So I just, the natural inclination is to over categorize and to over tag. And I think that actually works against you in a search element. And sometimes it makes it hard for your customer. So there is a user end of that as well, but I think that that's a big deal. The other thing is, and I'm guilty of this myself, but I did this on purpose. And again, everything I do on purpose. So just understand that that's a, be careful on your blog of making this too much information. Now, technically, I think we have too much information over here. But I needed to put the subscribe there. I needed to put the podcast subscribe there. So that, and those were the two most important things. If nobody ever looks down this sidebar, I don't care past that. I put myself, not because I have some great love of myself that I wanted it on every blog page. I put that there for Google's benefit, that I put my own bio and who I am and a picture of myself. So it validated who was writing this blog and that I'm an expert. And that's a very important thing. We've talked about how, if you're an expert, and the metrics that Google use to be a Google uses for that. So I went ahead and put my name and the company name in my blog on my page that was about me. I went and hooked up to the sidebar. And then the other thing that I have is the archive of the blog, which is fine, which is a lot. That's put there for Google, but if you notice, I stuck it way down the bottom. Just don't junk this up with too much stuff if you don't need to. Like I said, I think I probably have a lot of stuff, and as time goes on, this list gets longer, because you can see we've got posts back all the way to January to 2012. So there's a lot of posts on this thing, but it is what it is. But just beware that if you do it, you make sure that you're doing it in a way that's in your best interest to do it. And you're not just doing it to be junking everything all up. It's a way for users to have the tools that they need. I wanted to make sure that people knew that they could sign up. Even this could probably come off of here, but I kind of I want people following that podcast. So that's kind of why I stuck that there. Okay. Make sure that your blog post is mobile friendly and that it renders right on a mobile phone. I can't believe that I'm still having to say that, but it still continues to be the truth that I keep seeing these things that don't work out right. So make sure that you actually are having a mobile friendly website, a mobile friendly theme, and that the blog itself is mobile friendly and not all hosed up. The other thing I'm going to say is, if you can, try to come up with a table of contents for your, it's a plugin. I can get you the name of the plugin if you need it, but make sure on your blog post that you have a table of contents, because it's almost like a YouTube, not a YouTube, Wikipedia menu, but it's a way for Google to get in to see what you think is important about that post and where it is. So you can see, like, technically you could come here, click on the December the 2nd, and it would take you to the class link for here. If you go to the December the 9th, it actually moves you down the page to the December the 9th one. You see it jumped. I didn't give it enough time, but it moved it down to the December the 9th one. So you could get the information and just bypass the first two things and just pay attention to what you wanted to see. Okay. So, it's a good idea to have these incorporated into each of your blog posts as you do it. And I think I pretty much have this on every and any one that I have a table of contents on, just because it makes it easier. I don't know if maybe I don't, maybe I didn't put one on this one. You know, I say these things and then make a liar out of myself. It kind of cracks me up a little bit. Anyway, so make sure the website's mobile, it's mobile friendly. Make sure that you have your links in it. Make sure that you're good to go on, you know, that, all that kind of stuff. Understand the difference between pages and posts. Pages go, and it makes web pages, and they usually show up here on your menu. Posts are this whole thing that generates the blog, that generates this side archive, that generates the, you know, this is what, and I did a bad job in November. I'm going to say that. I don't think I put up way as much as I should. In fact, I only put the calendar up. So if you look at the November, I only put the calendar up. I didn't even get my podcasts up for the class. It's just been like crazy this month for some reason. So it make sure that you you know the difference between pages and posts, and that you're using them properly, so that they lay out properly. If you notice, I always use the class. I always put it in the blog. I don't put it as a page, because I want Google to know, hey, this is what's happening for November. This is what's happened for December. This is what's happened for October. But there's nothing, these are not things that are going to stay. So Google, once, you know, you start to get down, if I think if we come here, we're going to find we still got old posts from a long time ago that are just, you know, that are sitting out, that may or may not be valid. Whereas these pages, these are like evergreen, and they're always going to be here. So just make sure that you understand the difference between the two and that you're using the right one. Don't ever change the name of your domain or the name of your website in WordPress, because if you don't know what you're doing, that's the quickest way to break the entire thing. It's really quite important that you don't do that. So that's another whole topic unto itself but just the best thing I can tell you is don't do it. Also understand if your website is www or no www, and pick a position and stick with it. Those two things, although they do the same thing, they don't act the same way, and they cause problems. If you, like, let's say I had a website that was www, and then I did, all of a sudden everything became domain.com. Well, you basically sever the entire link profile from the website. So if you don't know what you're doing, just don't do it. But if you have an inclination to make a change, understand and make sure that you know how to button up that change. I have a roof care person right now that half their website is pointing to an old domain that they had for 15 years. And the other half of it is pointing to a new domain that they've had for less than a year. I really want to actually change it all back, but I can't do that. So I'm having to button that up and fix the old website. It literally smashed the website by splitting it that way. So these are things that keep happening, that if you don't know what you're doing, you make all these problems. I see it so often. And if you don't catch it and move it back fast enough, you basically lose any and all credit that you've had. So you don't ever really want to put yourself in that position. You know, somebody asked me this yesterday, and I punted it to the bottom. Make sure there's a way to search your website and that people can search for information on it. There's nothing more annoying than trying to figure out where something is without actually having to go rooting around for it. So make it easy on your end users and make sure there's a search bar. Um, make sure that you include your dates that you publish things. A lot of people turn them off because they don't want people to know. You're pretty much penalized for that. So make sure that you use the publish date function. You notice everything that I have as a date. What else I'm going to say on that? There seems to be a lot of this going on, taking an old page and changing its published date to move it forward. And that's not really the right way to go about doing things. Now, if you update the information and you're going to bring that information up to date, my opinion is leave the old page, make a new page, and link the old page to the new page. And, you know, so I have, let's say I had an article that talked about, oh, let's use tax law again. So I had an article from 2016 that talked about small business deductions, and you could buy football tickets and you could write off your paper towels and you could do this and you could do that, right? So in the old ways, in the whole world, you could do a certain way. Well, when the new tax laws came in 2018, it changed a lot of how that worked. So instead of going back to my 2016 page and just changing the guts out on that page and changing its date, I would leave the old page. I would make a new page that would say, hey, the rules have changed. This is the new rules. And I would go back to the old page and say, hey, the tax laws have been updated as of this date, and they have changed as of this over here. And that's what I would go ahead and that's how I would handle that. Now, there's a lot of converging or divergent opinions on that. So, you know, take that for what it's worth. But I am not a idea person that thinks you should go back and change dates and start monkeying around with pages. Make a new page, link the old page to it so that people know that you know that this is not valid anymore. There's a lot of that with medical stuff too. I was looking up something on my dog, and I every time I hit a page from 2004, it told me the dog was going to die in 3 weeks. But in the last, since 2004 to now, so much has changed that even if he does have this, the course of treatment is so much different than it was, and he's not going to die in 3 weeks. So that old material to the new material, to understanding, it's helpful to understand where we were, to come where we are. You can't erase your history. You just need to link it together better so that people understand what they're looking at and when. And I think a date is important, and you shouldn't undate stuff. So that's another big deal. I think I'm pretty much to the end of where I want to cover today. I don't know if anybody has any other questions. This is our last class for 2020 for this group. We'll be back in January, of course. We have 2 more other classes through HCC next week, and then we're out for the year. And then we'll be back in January, and we're going to start talking about all the things that we're going to have to start doing in January if we want to have some success, because of how Google's the changes. They've already announced that we need to do this by May. So I might as well start getting you guys all marching in the right direction now. So that's everything. So if anybody has any questions, great. If not, let me, you know, that's fine. And this is the end of the road. And I thank everybody for attending today. And I hope everybody has a great end of your year, and a very happy holidays, and Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah holiday season. So no questions? Okay. Thank you for joining in today's Internet Marketing Clinic. We hope you enjoyed our program, and we will have more marketing information for you next week. Be sure to tune in.